This is a bit of an experimental video. I hope that the changing background doesn't make you feel dizzy, but I'm recording myself as I walk around in my office. Yes, this is my office. It's quite messy. You can see I haven't really finished moving in. And this is office 322 in the IH building. I figured today I would experiment. I told you that I would talk about some of the problems and some of the good stuff in your speech, in class next time, because you gave a speech this morning. But I thought maybe I would record a summary of the points that I wanted to bring up then, partly because to make sure I don't, forget things, but also partly so you can see some of my comments before you come to class. So then if you have any questions, you can think about them or prepare them, and you'll be able to, to do that a little more easily if you know what I want to talk about as far as, just general problems or general hints, tips, and also things that I think you did well and how you can do those things even better. So I'm going to talk about the positives of your speeches this morning first, and I'm going to talk about the negatives after. And I want to say first, these are all general points. So, you might have done some of these things and maybe you didn't do other ones. These aren't, problems or good positive skills that everyone used. Everyone used some of them, and, I would like for you to figure out which ones you used and which ones you would like to work on. So, with that, I'm going to start going down my list, which is, handwritten list. Anyway, the points I have on my list are, first, the good things. You use jokes. At least one of you used a very clear joke, and a couple of you used funny things when you were talking. Humor is really good. It makes the audience feel comfortable. It makes the audience feel like, they're having fun, and it sort of gets them relaxed, and it gets them ready to listen to whatever else you want to talk about. So jokes are good. Humor is good. I don't want you to turn your whole speech into a comedy act, unless that works for you, unless that's, your style. But you can't always use jokes, and you can't always rely on humor to do everything. However, humor is a very useful skill. It's a very useful tool. And I thought it was used well at least once in class. Vulnerability. Several of you told personal stories that were, kind of difficult to tell. That made you vulnerable, vulnerable, in front of the class. When you're doing public speaking, being vulnerable is really, it's a powerful thing, because the audience feels like you're sharing something with them. And when the audience feels that way, that means they feel a little more connection to you. One of the things you're going to learn this semester is that making that connection with the audience is really, really important for public speaking. The more and the deeper that connection you can make, the more they're going to carry away they're going to carry away when they walk out of the room where they heard you speak. The more, they're going to feel like your speech was something that was really important and worth hearing. So that was my second point, was, vulnerability. Besides the vulnerable point, also just a lot of you used personal stories. This is good. Sometimes when you ask someone to say, tell me about yourself, they'll tell you an abstract point, like, I'm a very happy person. What does that mean? What does I'm a happy person mean? It doesn't really mean anything, because it doesn't tell me anything about you except, just a very vague description. But if you were to tell me a story about, why do you think you're a very happy person? If you told a story that showed us what kind of happy person you are, that would be much more interesting, and we would understand what you mean by happy a lot better. So, telling personal stories is a great way to explain things. And we'll talk about this more also when you're doing, argumentative speeches, when you're learning how to give presentations on, on arguments, and how useful personal stories are to proving a point or explaining a complex idea. So it's not just useful for introducing yourself, but also for all kinds of other purposes. Suspense. Some of you made us wait to find out why you said something. Like, I'm a very, what was it? I'm trying to remember the example, but I can't recall it. But there was one story where someone told told a little bit of their story and then changed the topic a little bit and left us wondering, oh, well, wait, but what happened? That's a really interesting way of getting the audience to listen carefully. You make people wonder, so wait, what happened? And they keep waiting and they keep waiting and they keep waiting. And as long as you don't make them wait too long, you get their interest. And that is very effective. You can get people to pay attention, very close attention, just by getting them curious. Most of you were very organized. That is, most of you seemed to have prepared for the speech. Good. Keep doing that. That was great. I had the feeling that nobody just came to class and made up a speech. Nobody just improvised. And that was encouraging because, trust me, sometimes students do that and you can tell right away and the quality is usually not good. You guys, some of your structures were a little confusing or they were too complicated or that kind of thing. But everyone made an effort to prepare. And you don't need to be perfect. But if you show the audience that you're trying to do a good job, the audience will appreciate it. That's a really important point. If you seem to be trying to do a good job, the audience will, forgive some problems or imperfections. So that was good. Organized, prepared. All of you seemed to think about it before you spoke. All of you seemed to have some kind of structure. Everyone had thought about, what kind of conclusion they wanted to make. Your conclusions weren't perfect sometimes, but at least you tried. The last positive point I have, most of you seem to be trying to be sort of personable. You tried to be sort of likable to the audience. That is, you wanted to sort of show them you're a normal person and show them that, you're like them and you can, maybe you could be friends and that kind of thing. That is, you tried to show some sort of normalness, some personality there. That's really important. You don't want to be one of those public speakers who stands up and goes blah 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 blah. That's terrible because the whole audience doesn't care and they don't feel a connection to you and they don't feel that you're like them. All of you guys, you showed some personality at least. Some of you were more personable than others. Some of you were more confident than others, but we'll work on that. So I'm going to move on to the negative points, the things where I think, maybe you can avoid doing these things, or maybe you shouldn't do these things, or, these are things we're going to work on this semester. So these are the negative points. First of all, disclaimers and apologies. When you make a disclaimer, what you're saying is, you're apologizing for something and saying it's not your fault. So like, for example, oh, I'm really sorry, but I haven't studied English in a long time. Or you say, well, my English isn't very good, so I hope you listen really hard so you can understand. These kinds of disclaimers do not make the audience respect you more. One of the things you want the audience to feel you're confident, that you're in control, that you're leading what's going on. You're the boss of the room when you're speaking. If you come in and you start making, disclaimers like, well, my English isn't very good, so you're going to have to listen harder when I speak. The audience, if your English isn't very good, the audience already will listen harder. You don't need to tell them to listen harder. They will pay attention if you're saying something interesting. And if your English isn't very good, prepare. I mean, you can prepare the vocabulary. You can check the pronunciations of the words that you're going to use. And then the audience will understand that, yeah, your English isn't perfect, but you made an effort to prepare. Same thing with apologies. Apologizing at the beginning of your speech, I'm sorry I didn't get to prepare. No, that's not an apology. That's an insult to the class. So nobody said that, by the way, but that's just an example. Apologizing because your English isn't good, don't do it. Don't do it. I mean, your English is what your English is. No, not everyone is, perfect. And in fact, nobody's perfect. And so if your English is not the best in the world, that's okay because you prepared really hard or because you have a really good idea to talk about, right? So don't apologize. Focus on your strengths. Focus on the positive things that you're offering the audience. If you apologize, you make them feel like, oh, this might suck. So that's one thing. Declaring you're nervous. Okay, it's okay to say, oh, I'm a little nervous. Or, wow, I didn't think I would be so nervous today. And sometimes that comes out as a joke, and that helps the whole audience to relax, and it helps you to relax. So, I'm not saying don't say, oh, I feel a little nervous. that's fine to say that, although, it's not the best thing to start a speech with. It's not, terrible and horrible to say that. But it's when you keep saying it, or it's when you keep acting like you're nervous, like, oh my God. Or at the end of the speech when you, okay, thank you. And you go and you sit down and you run to your seat because you're in a hurry, because you're nervous. Those kinds of things, they take away from the professionality of your speech. You're not being very professional when you do that. You're showing that, you don't feel comfortable. And if you're not comfortable, the audience isn't comfortable. Why should they be comfortable? So that's not something you should be doing. You should be, instead of projecting nervousness and discomfort, which I think some of you think, oh, then people are going to feel sorry for me, and then they're not going to judge me as harshly. In fact, it's the opposite. If you project confidence, people will respect you more. If you project that you're nervous, people are just going to feel sorry for you, and they will respect you less. And they'll also rank your speech more negatively. So don't make a big thing about your nervousness. Everyone is nervous. It's natural, and we'll talk a lot about that this semester. Don't use a script. I've told classes time and time and time again, if you prepare a script, then you will have a much higher chance of messing up. When you memorize a script, you have to memorize, hundreds of words. When you memorize an outline, you only have to remember a few basic points. So what you need to do instead of using a script is practice talking through your outline. Have an outline, memorize your outline, and then practice speaking spontaneously from your outline. And if you do it a lot, you'll find what vocabulary you need to prepare and what words you need and all that stuff, and it'll be no problem. Speaking of vocabulary, prepare your vocabulary and your pronunciation. You need to check what words you're going to use in your speech, and you need to get that vocabulary and that pronunciation ready before you get to the front of the room, so that you don't need to ask, how do I spell this word, or how do I say this word? In a real speech, I'm not going to be there to tell you how to say these things. It's your job to prepare that before the day of the speech. Let's see, relying on your audience to react. If you ask a question to the audience, chances are, especially if you're giving a speech to a classroom full of Korean students, they're not going to answer. That's how classes work in Korea. Professors ask questions, students sit silently, and the professor answers the question. Guess what? Students keep doing this even when it's you speaking. Students keep doing this even when it's a public speaking event. So you really want to be careful how you let yourself rely on the reaction of an audience. If you ask a question you don't want them to answer. Or be very careful about asking specific people in the audience about a specific question. It's really, really important to be careful with that, because you can fall flat. It can look like you're not connecting with the audience and everyone feels weird. Be careful with your jokes. Sometimes jokes can be offensive, or sometimes jokes are a little lame, as in not funny. The joke we heard in class, one joke was quite effective. There was one or two jokes where I was kind of like, is that a joke? I'm not really sure. And people didn't laugh very much, and if a joke fails, often you can make a joke about your failed joke. Like, wow, that really wasn't funny. And usually the audience will like that. Audiences are very forgiving, but you have to be honest and upfront with them about, when you're not doing a good job or when something flops. Let's see, 3 more points. Mumbling. When you talk like this, people can't hear you. It's just not very useful because, just speak up. You're going to have to speak up. We're going to work on projecting your voice. You're going to develop that, but don't mumble. Don't flee. F-L-E-E. And that's the word that means to run away from something. Don't flee at the end of your speech. You should be standing there saying, okay, thank you everybody, and I'm wondering, do you have any questions, and that kind of thing. If you run back to your seat right away, it means I didn't enjoy speaking. If you didn't enjoy speaking, the audience shouldn't enjoy it either. Last point is, don't ask for pity. You don't want the audience to feel sorry for you. It's a very, very, very common technique in beginning public speakers. They try to, show how nervous they are and how hard it is for them, and the audience is supposed to feel sorry for them. and the audience just respects them less. So I think those are most of my points. I'm going to wrap up because I think YouTube is going to stop me in a couple of seconds. If you have questions, let's talk about it in class. Thanks.